Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
So we are looking ahead to Champions Cup weekend. Suddenly has come quickly around the corner after Six Nations exploits. We have Rory O'Connor from the Irish Independent here in the studio. Hello.
Hey Joe.
And Eddie O'Sullivan is on the line. So they were back in Pro 14 action over the weekend. Rory, Connacht were beaten by Edinburgh. It continues a relatively disappointing season for them. Ulster were beaten by Cardiff in Cardiff. Munster, the sole winner of the Irish provinces, they beat the Scarlets 19 points to 7, and Leinster haven't had many defeats this year, but they were beaten 32 points to 18 away to the Ospreys. So we look ahead to Champions Cup weekend. Scarlets play La Rochelle on the Friday. It's Munster Toulon 3:15 on Saturday, and then on the Sunday 2 o'clock has Clermont against Racing, and then at the Aviva it's Leinster against Saracens, which kicks off at 3:30. Connacht are in Challenge Cup action. They're at home to Gloucester, 1 o'clock kickoff on Sunday. So I think the main thing to do from the weekend is almost pick through the injury situation, Rory, and Munster in particular are frankly in a dreadful state.
Dreadful, possibly a little bit strong. I think they'll still be able to cobble together a pretty good 15. Their bench will
you
definitely
tell me who's out and who's in doubt then.
So Tommy O'Donnell, Chris Clute was out during the was ruled out during the Six Nations, and Tommy O'Donnell has joined them. So that's a particular problem in the back row. Keith Earls, ruled out from the Six Nations. Chris Farrell as well. Andrew Conway doesn't look like he's going to make it back in time. They're already without Jaco Taute. Tyler Blindell out for the season. Major concerns about him.
Comfortable with dreadful.
I think when you actually pick through who's there, they still have a good 15 to pick from, and they're bringing back Murray and O'Mahony after their little trip to Dubai last weekend, so they're high on life from their Six Nations success, so that strengthens them. But then you look at Toulon beating Clermont 49-0 at the weekend. Now Clermont have given up in the top 14, so there's a little bit of that, but it's still a pretty strong team. So Toulon are bringing over a very good team and are in good form. And Munster do have problems in their backline. Rory Scannell's a doubt after the weekend, which leaves them very light in midfield, and that's where you'd probably have the biggest concern. And Leinster haven't escaped either, and they probably have more resources in terms of their deep. We talk about their squad depth quite a lot, but Jack Conan emerges as a bit of a doubt today with a knee injury. And even if they do welcome Sean O'Brien and Rhys Ruddock back, they're both very light on game time. So there's a bit of a concern there. So yeah, I think there's definitely these are weird games to preview because we haven't really seen these teams in action since January. We've been focused very much on Ireland. The shadow streak have muddled their way through the Pro 14 over the last 6 to 8 weeks, and now suddenly we're in the quarter-final, the biggest game of the season. Yeah,
it is a bit of a jolt, Eddie, to suddenly slingshot into these games, and there's no real form line to go on.
No, and I think the other problem as well is that even the guys who are coming back now who had their week's rest after the Six Nations haven't really had a game with the province. It's a big challenge. I remember if you go back a number of years, there used to be a longer gap. So if a fella got a week off after the Six Nations, he still got a game this weekend with the team before he played in the European game the following week. There's no kind of, they're going in cold. A lot of the guys, all the guys who basically featured in the Grand Slam, did all the heavy lifting. They're all going in cold. So in terms of Johan van Graan and Leo Cullen planning to their team strategy, it's going to be under a lot of pressure. And then you layer on top of that all the injuries, which are quite extensive when you write them down. And certainly I think Munster are going to really, well, if they hit Rory Scannell on the field, I think they'll probably be okay, but they could be in huge trouble in the middle of the field, with Farrell gone, with Earls gone, with Scannell if he doesn't make it, Andrew Conway as well. Like there's a huge problem. If you look at the calibre of player that Toulon have in the middle of the field, it's scary, So they have certainly a challenge set out for them, I think it's going to be cutting and pasting for particularly for Johan van Graan this week and trying to get across the line.
At the moment, Rory, it would be Rory Scannell who'd presumably going alongside Sammy Arnold. That'd be the best case scenario for them at the moment. Toulon have won 4 of their last 6. You mentioned the win over Clermont, 49 points to 0, even if it is a slightly uninterested Clermont side. So are they equally destroyed by injuries, Toulon? No,
they're not, and they even if they were, they still have just that. Their squad is their mega rich owner is it's a who's who of rugby, and even if you're looking at Munster trying to get Rory Scannell fit because they're down so many numbers, and Toulon will be able to choose from Matthew Bastareaud coming off probably his best Six Nations in quite a long time, Ma Nonu and Malachi Fakatoa, who they added to their squad in the midst of the Six Nations, kind of slipped them in there. And like he's turning up since he joined them. I mean, he's one of these players who probably would be playing for the All Blacks in a different era, who has just decided to chase to take the unbelievable money that's on offer in the south of France. So they have great resources. Their 23 on the weekend was pretty strong. Their back three, Chris Ashton was playing a 15, scoring tries for fun. Now, look, Sun was on their back. They were at home. They were facing a Claremont side that have, their focus is firmly on this weekend because this is their season.
Yeah.
So you don't want to read too much into that. But certainly Munster, if Scannell doesn't make it, you're trying to scratch around looking for who. Did they bring in someone like Dan Goggin, who hasn't played a lot of rugby this season and is very inexperienced, or did they put JJ Hanrahan in at 12, where he hasn't really played under Johan van Graan this season? So, you are stretching Munster's backline resources. I think Zebo will make it. As far as I know, he trained today, so that's good.
Okay.
But there's definitely a lot hinges on Rory Scannell's fitness, so that's a big one. Eddie's right.
Okay, you mentioned Ashton there. It wasn't an isolated performance at the weekend, because in scoring the tries at the weekend, he's equalled the record for top 14 tries, his 21st of the campaign, with plenty more games to come. So how do Munster go about their business here, Eddie? What's the game plan against this Toulon side?
I suppose the technical and tactical side of it is that they've got to find a way of locking up the midfield against Toulon, because they could really cause off problems from there. They're going to stay really smart on field position. So, I think it's going to be really about controlling the game. I suspect if they spend most of the time in Toulon's half, that's going to be crucial, because if they get Toulon get into their half and get on a roll, like, there's almost an inevitability they might score. Even if it's not tries, you end up giving penalties if you're under constant pressure. I think in terms of their attack, they'll probably have a very smart kicking game. They'll have a very good kick chase, and they'll probably have to take Toulon on up front, really, which is a big ask. But I suppose Munster will depend a lot, like backs to the wall performance. An emotional performance probably is the best thing Munster can put up there on the weekend. Now, if they get a few guys back in the field, I think Scannell is key. If he's there, I think they change their midfield options. But I think it's going to be about a very smart kicking game, a very good defensive game, and a lot of passion and emotion. And the kicking game keeps them out of their half, and the passion and emotion they bring defensively keeps them in the game. And it's a tall order, But Munster have done this before, Historically, when people think they don't have a shot, they usually pull one off, and I think that's what they'll be going back to next weekend. There's no doubt, like, if you line the two teams up on paper, you'd be crazy not to pick Toulon as favourites. But the game isn't played on paper, as we all know, and I think that's Munster's best shot, really, is the way they go about their business.
It's a well-worn story, isn't it? French Goliath coming over. We spend the whole week talking about their star names, and then Munster produce something. But there is reason to fear this Toulon team. I am wary of going down that well-worn story route, because we've burned about it so many times before. And Munster have, like last season, they hammered Toulouse, and now Toulouse are an absolutely fading force. Whereas I think Toulon, while they're not the force that won 3 in a row a couple of seasons ago, I think they're better. They've come out of the other side of a really poor by their own standards patch. They've young halfbacks, or they might go with Tronduc, who had another who had quite a good Six Nations. They've Guirado, I think, fit again at hooker, who was France's best player in the Six Nations alongside Bastereau. And then they have the two Fijians on the wings. They've Ashton at fullback, so they can hurt you when they go wide. Looks like the weather's going to take a turn for the worse over the course of the week, which could play into Munster's hand, and they will back themselves, I think, to play with pace and to try and get over the ball quickly, to provide quick ruck ball, and to kind of kill Toulon the way they tried to kill Racing on those games. I think it's going to be quite a similar template. It's worked for them before, but it came up short against Saracens last year. I'm not sure if Toulon are as good as that Saracens team, but they do have a lot of weapons to hurt you with.
That Saracens team last year just strangled Munster. It never felt even like the possibility of a try was on for much of that game. And I mean, people might very well remember the Scarlets Toulon game pre-Christmas, which was fantastic and a bit of a shootout. That is not the Munster template here. They do not want to get into a shootout with Toulon.
I don't imagine so. I think I don't think they win if they do that. But I don't think they have the firepower that Toulon have. And I think, especially if the conditions are poor, you've got the best box kicker in the world. Why not use them? You've got the chasing game. You see two Fijians. Tuisova's a class player. If you turn him, can you get a bit of change out of him? Ashton hasn't played an awful lot of rugby at fullback, so is there a bit of room there to work a few areas? Even when Toulon were at the best, Munster ran them very close in the 2014 semi-final, and largely through forcing them into pressure mistakes. So maybe there's an avenue there as well that they can learn from. They've got a lot of smart players in their squad. Not sure if their bench is going to add a huge amount of value, whereas Toulon will roll on big guns. But look, we've seen them do it against Racing. Thomond, you can't discount the Thomond factor, however intangible it is as well. So it's going to be, it's a hard one to weigh up because there's so little form line to go off.
Yeah.
But there's history. There's the Thomond Park factor. There's Munster's. The fact that Munster have been really competitive at this level for the last 2 seasons, all weighing in their favour. And if they can get the right 15 on the pitch, you give them a really good fighting chance.
It is incredibly difficult when you weigh it up in those terms. Eddie, do you feel strongly one way or the other?
I think this, if Munster can pull off this, it'll be a phenomenal achievement, because I think one of the problems they have is, like, I don't think they can beat up Toulon up front, but they're going to have to play a tight game. And I think Rory's right. If the weather is a messy day and we have the best scrum half in the world, put some pressure on their backfield, get into them, I think you could upset them. And I think that, I think the fact that they won 49-0 on the weekend is not a good thing for them. It's actually better for Munster, because I think the danger is they come in and they kind of sense that they just have to show up against Munster, which is great if they do that. Like they might underestimate Munster somewhat, given that they've had such a big win and they feel really confident in their skins, and that's when you're most vulnerable in rugby. And I think that could be a factor in it, even though they mightn't believe that. But I think the problem in there, if we attack to the midfield, even the problem is with Bastro or Fekitour, that if they get over the ball, they're going to get them off it. They're very strong over the ball. All those things are problems. Like, you have to be very careful where you attack in the midfield, how you attack in the midfield. If there's any sense of them getting over the ball, it can be very hard to clean them out. You could get turned over. I just think it's a huge ask for Munster at the moment. If Munster in the whole of their health, if everybody was on deck and they were firing all cylinders, I'd say I'd be fancying Munster. But I think at the moment they've been very unfortunate with injuries, and they haven't really played together as a team. Like the key guys, like obviously O'Mahony, CJ Stander, Conor Murray, have been out of the loop for now 2 months. They're all huge challenges for Van Gran, this week.
It's incredible how it's all swung around, because if you think back to the final round of the Champions Cup group stages, when they were bonus point at home, and they could almost choose whether or not to get the bonus point to see who they might get in the knockout stages, and there was a real sense then, Rory, that Munster at home, this Munster team playing like this, will be not heavy favourites, but favourites going in against Toulon, if it is Toulon. That has swung right around now.
Yeah, and I think Munster can take heart from that, because they, their last memory of playing all together was a positive one, and they were strong at that time, and they still beat Scarlets at the weekend despite all of these issues. And look, Scarlets were missing a lot of Welsh internationals. They were doing the Irish trick of resting up their internationals ahead of their big game this Friday. But still, Munster weathered an early storm and produced a pretty strong performance to beat them. The problem they have, I think, is that they're able to beat the likes of Scarlets with a relatively simple game. It's when they come up against the big beasts they can run into difficulty. But Saracens are the only team that really have proven too strong for them over the last couple of years. So I'm wary of underestimating them too much, but it is a tall order.
Leinster then, what kind of shape do they arrive in, Rory?
Similar in terms of lack of cohesion, but probably have better the better squad depth to come in, and more Grand Slam winners. They get James Ryan back from Ireland, suddenly a proven international quality second row. When he went into the Six Nations, he was a lot less proven. James Ryan
still yet to lose a professional game. He starts.
Yeah, he has, and we don't know if he will start this weekend. He wasn't a starter for Leinster when he went away with Ireland. The other two, well, Devon Toner's been heavily involved with Ireland, so it's not like he's going to be breaking up a partnership that's been going for the last while. So there's a selection dilemma there. You've got a load of Ireland front rows. The tight five is going to be very strong. Back row's a little light for we do big up the Leinster back row depth quite a lot, but it's light on a few of them. Dan Levy will come straight back in. It's who goes alongside him. Is it two players who haven't played in a while? Because Conan may miss out. He didn't train today. That's a bit of a concern. Although it is a Sunday game, so there's more time. Sexton and McGrath, pretty proven partnership at 9-10, but then Robbie Henshaw's missing, and he's a big part of that Leinster midfield. Looks like Easton Asiwa will go in at 12 alongside Gary Ringrose, who they haven't had on deck for quite some time, and they're missing quite a few in the back three. It looks like they'll probably go with James Lowe and Fardy and leave Gibson Park out in that three-way conundrum that they have. you've got Rob Kearney or Joey Carberry. Kearney's the form pick, but they like Carberry at fullback. So I'm not sure where they'll go there. And then the other one is probably Adam Byrne or Barry Daly or something like that, because Fergus McFadden went off with he had a HIA and is now doing the return to play protocols.
Yeah.
So he's out. So look, there's a lot of moving parts for Stuart Lancaster and Leo Cullen this week to try and bed in. But when you name that team out, it's actually not that bad.
No, it doesn't sound that bad. As you went through it there, each line seemed fine to me. To be honest. As for Saracens, Eddie, how different? People remember the Munster game very well, I presume, at the Aviva, where Saracens just looked pretty awesome that day and almost unbeatable from a Munster point of view. How different is this Saracens team? They're second in the Premiership. They beat Quins at the weekend, 24-11. The general word, I don't know how much you've seen of them, is that they're coming back into something approaching last year's form. I don't know, is that right?
Yeah, I think they're on an upward trajectory for sure. They had a bit of a mini crisis earlier in the year. They lost some games on the run, but I think every team goes through that, and they've just kind of found their gears again now. I suppose the big one is Owen Farrell. I think without Owen Farrell, they're a different team. He's such an influential figure for them. So I think if he was off the field, it's going to be a fantastic duel between himself and Sexton again. They're two very similar characters in how they play and how they commit and how they manage games and how they almost bully their own teammates into doing the right thing. It's incredible to watch them. But I think if Farrell is off the field, I think that changes a lot of things. Of course, Saracens aren't going to admit that, but I think he's huge for them. And that's the thing I think we're looking at. If Farrell makes the game, then I think it'll be a ding dong affair. I do think Leinster again are under the pump with injuries, but the depth they have, in fairness, I think they're much more equipped to deal with it than probably any other province in Ireland at the moment. And but again, there's that thing of I think there's so many players coming back in this week. I know Leo last week kind of made a reference to the fact that they mightn't all start, but if Furlong, Healy, James Ryan, Toner, Levy, Sexton, Ringrose, Rob Kearney, I can't imagine many of those guys not making the team, if you know what I mean. But it's still, you have to put them all in and get them all out. And all those guys have been gone for 2 months. They just haven't been around Leinster, and we don't often kind of credit the effect that has. I know the calls aren't changing that, but it's just getting that synergy back again. And they only have this week to do it. There was these guys that wouldn't have shut up until today at work. So it's a big challenge for Leo and Stuart Lancaster. But I think Leinster had the horses for this one. But I wouldn't be as confident if Owen Farrell is playing. I think he's a big difference. But I don't think Saracens are in the same place they were this time last year. They're probably not back in the full of their health, but it won't be easy for sure. They have a knack of squeezing out results when they shouldn't.
Yeah, Farrell picked up a quad injury against Ireland.
The word is he'll probably make it. They do have an England international backup, a little bit like Joey Carberry backing up Johnny Sexton, Alex Lavotsky, who's quite highly rated, but he's not Owen Farrell. And it would be a real shame if we didn't get Sexton versus Farrell whatever it is now, certainly part 2 of this season. Farrell nearly broke Sexton's nose 2 weeks ago, and Johnny hasn't forgotten. We were asking him about it today. He was up at Leinster's press conference. Farrell said it was accidental, but it doesn't sound like Johnny's too sure. So I think that those battles, James Ryan against Maro Itoje, this is as close to a test match as you're going to get. It's almost
Itoje was the word. I didn't see it, but apparently it was very, very good at the weekend, and
he was man of the match. And all the talk about him being tired, suddenly he was back to his best. He scored a try and did a little sleep on the pitch, just as kind of we don't often see celebrations in rugby, tailor-made celebrations, but he's cut from a different cloth a little bit. But it's going to be it's a pity this isn't a semi-final, because it almost deserves a 3-week lead-in. It almost deserves. After Leinster lost to Claremont in the semi-final last year, Johnny Sexton's first reaction was to say, God, I wish we'd had it cut off Saracens. This is the game Leinster have wanted. They've only met twice ever in Europe, in the 2010-2011 season, when Leinster were at their height and Saracens were only beginning to build. The 4 teams that meet this weekend have won 10 of the last 12 European Cups between them. So it's almost like 4 dynasties colliding on Irish soil. It's really it deserves a bit of hype, but it's just such a short lead in. This is going to be a really, really good game, and it's almost England-Ireland Mark II.
So do you almost feel from a Leinster point of view there is an element of just shooting down this other dynasty and saying, you guys were good and everything, you had a nice little run, but
Well,
we're a level above.
At least they got 2 cracks off Toulon, and they came up short, but they got their 2 cracks, and they met them in the pools as well. So they played them 4 times during their period of dominance, whereas Saracens, they haven't even got a chance. Yeah. And I think they'll back themselves as well. I think last season they really fancied their chances of taking on Saracens, even though everyone else thought Saracens were fairly untouchable. Yeah. It was very pointed of Johnny at the time. So I've been looking forward to this. This is the draw everyone was hoping for at some stage. I think these two teams they play a slightly different style. They're both at the top of their game. Maybe Saracens are coming off their height and Leinster are getting towards it. I think we're in for a real treat and close to test match intensities you're going to get, which we've been served up some pretty classic games in the last 6 or 8 weeks. It's nice to keep it going. Yeah, for sure. Connacht then, they're in 5th now in Conference A. They're 8 points behind Cardiff. They lost to Edinburgh at the weekend, 22 points to 9. Is a heavy enough defeat, so really their chances of making Champions Cup next season are dwindling by the weekend, really, unless they win this competition. So they have Gloucester on Sunday at the Sports Ground. How's that going to go? Very hard to tell. Connacht have they have kept their best performances for the Challenge Cup, although their pool was probably quite weak, and the English teams didn't seem to take it as Worcester didn't really take it that seriously. So it's hard to get a form line on them as well. They've been less affected by Six Nations call-ups, and yet their Pro 14 form has been pretty poor. Gloucester have been going reasonably well in the English Premiership, are probably going to be in the Champions Cup next season, so it's maybe not as important to them. But for Johan Ackermann, their coach, who's come from South Africa, from the Lions, a successful team, and David Humphreys, who's been there for a couple of years, who's the director of rugby, maybe a trophy would be a pretty nice stepping stone to whatever they want to achieve. So it's going to be difficult for Connacht. Gloucester are good, but they're not unbeatable by any means. Yeah, excuse me by the way, I keep saying Saturday or Sunday. It's Saturday 1 o'clock at the Sports Ground on Saturday, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, I think Connacht at this stage are probably, this is their only chance really of making a big impact in the season. I think the Pro 14 is slipping away from, and they know that, so they could keep the pot boiling if they can get past Gloucester. I think they'll fancy their chances. Gloucester have blown a bit hot and cold this year anyway, although Humps will know the run of the sports ground anyway. He's not going to be right into something he didn't expect, which can often happen to teams going to Galway. But having said that, I think Connacht are due a big game as well. They've lost probably 3 of their last 5 games, I think, and they're not really firing well. They're kind of stumbling a wee bit. A good performance on Saturday would kind of turn the energy of the season around, which seems to be going the wrong way at the moment. So I think they'll pitch up on Saturday and put in a big performance, and I think they could get past Gloucester. Gloucester, like the teams like Gloucester, they always have to keep an eye on the Aviva Premiership as well, and that does take its own energy. They are still focused on that. I think they won't be like maybe 100% dialed in to this, although at the same time they'd probably want to get down as far down the track in this as they can. But I think Connacht need and are due a big performance at home in Galway. I think they'll get past Gloucester. It won't be easy for them, but I just feel they're due a big one, and they've been good in this tournament.
I was just going to say, whatever chemistry is kicking in this tournament, they've generally saved their best performances for it. And if there's a do or die element to this Saturday.
Well, it is. It's the business end of the season. So I think, that's why I fancy Connacht this weekend will put up a big one, and that'll be enough to beat Gloucester and get them into the next round. And that could re-energise their season. I don't think they're going to go anywhere in the Pro 14 at this stage, but they just need to get their form back, get their mojo back, and look, this is a great opportunity for them to do it. If they don't, look at it this way: if they don't do it next Saturday, the season could look very forlorn for them in the running,
Yeah, Rory, it's a grim last 2 months if they don't. And it's John Muldoon's last 2 months as a player for Connacht, and you'd like to see them send them out on some sort of a high, at least give them some sort of climax. And I think, rugby, you can put together an emotional performance. You can get up for a game this week and then just, not throw, but use the next 2 weeks to get ready for the next one, a big semi-final, and then hopefully get yourself to Bilbao. And Kieran Keane's first season hasn't gone to plan, but there have been a few signs recently that they're getting it together for him a little bit. They've made a couple of pretty good signings for next season. It'd be nice to get back into that Champions Cup. So there are reasons for them to go about it. There are definite motivational factors there that they can draw on. It's whether they have enough rugby within there. If they get Bundy Aki in there on the form that he was in for Ireland, that's going to be pretty good. I think they're probably outsiders to do it, but again, at home against a team that they know very well in Gloucester, I wouldn't write them off by any means. Okay, we'll leave it there and see where things lie next Monday. Eddie O'Sullivan, thank you. Rory O'Connor of the Irish Independent, thanks a million.
Off the ball on News Talk. News Talk Breakfast.
Half the time people say it's refreshing when I answer a question because you answer it honestly, and then as soon as you answer it honestly, there's a whole scoop of, oh my God, she said this, and it's because, you know, politicians are only a reflection of the people that we serve. We're human beings. We make mistakes. This drama that comes from the likes of the opposition